Today, this lovely beeswax candle shaped like a pine cone that I recently got as a gift is informing this reading a little bit. So I looked up the symbolism of the pine cone because I received this candle, and I also did a little foraging for pine cones recently and have them throughout my home, and they have such beautiful symbolism. And I'm sure you'll see more pine cones show up in readings in the future, and we might work off of like the other aspects of what they symbolize. But today, what I want to focus on is one thing they can symbolize is an awakening. They can symbolize like the invitation to be more spiritually conscious. And so when I saw that, when I was like researching online, I thought of this awakening card from the Muse Tarot. So this is card 20 of the Major Arcana, which is typically in like a standard deck is Judgment. And so it's a little different interpretation of it to have it be awakening. So that's what I thought of right away when I was reading about pine cone symbolism and what I wanted to do with this reading. And so the first thing I'd like to do is read a little bit from this Muse Tarot guidebook about this awakening card. And then I'm going to ask the tarot and the soul tree deck to give us a little more information about essentially like messages from spirit about how to facilitate more spiritual growth, more spiritual awakening at the time you find this video. So with that being said, let's start by reading about this beautiful card, and then we'll start to shuffle the cards. So her deck is online here, so I'm just pulling it up on my phone, or her guidebook, excuse me, is online. And the keywords for this card are judgment, facing the music, ascension, accepting and forgiving your beautiful soul. Isn't that nice? Creator musing. When we accept our true paths, our purpose, our truth, we create from a place of true joy. Word prompt. Intrinsic expansion. Wow, I just love that so much. So it says experiencing the tarot with this awakening card. She says, rising above the clouds, we find clarity in ourselves, in our pasts, in our actions. And when we are called forth to look at the timeline of our own lives, we find a judgment day that can help us to ascend beyond the limits of ourselves if only we are keen to learn, expand, and grow. The key to this judgment, this reckoning of the heart and memory, is to be able to dish out radical self-compassion and forgiveness, and to see yourself as the beautiful spark of inspiration that you are. You are divine, love, mystery. And when you open yourself up to this beautiful truth, you will see that your flaws are rooted in your humanness, and that your fears are rooted in your desire to always do a better job than last time. Beautiful soul, bright, shiny light, awaken to the magic you possess in your heart, and look at your past as an incredible lesson, a history, a story of beautiful and broken things that have brought you right here to this moment, to this place where you can awaken to your own magnificence, where the only judgment to be laid is by your own honest heart, and where forgiveness of the spirit by the self is the remedy for futures cherished. Wow, isn't that so beautiful? I just love it so much. So here we go. That's the theme of our reading, you could say. We're going to begin by pulling a few cards from the Muse deck. Again, this is essentially advice from spirit or messages from spirit in terms of how to facilitate, you could say, more spiritual awakening. But another way to put it is just more spiritual growth so that you can awaken to your own magnificence, right? Because part of the reckoning process isn't only awakening to the things we maybe have done that we aren't so proud of. It's also awakening to our own magnificence. And I think the more we are willing to clearly see the things in our past that we're not proud of, feel those feelings, make amends as we can and as we need to, the more then we are willing, or the more we're able, I think, to awaken to also the magnificence inside. So reckoning is such an interesting process, isn't it? Because it is both awakening to our shadow and to our light. So here we go. Messages, please, for the viewer at the time they find this video about how to facilitate more spiritual growth. There they are. So we've got the Queen of Emotions, which is the Queen of Cups, the Chariot in reverse, and Strength. Wow, that's beautiful. Now let's get, I think I'm going to get two of these Soul Tree cards for clarification. 2 cards, please. Clarify this message. This is a brand new deck. It was also a gift. Beautiful cards. It's still a little sticky though, because I haven't, I've only used it a couple times so far, personally. This is actually the first time it's showing up on the channel. Awakening advice from Spirit. Look at that. There are our 2 cards. Aren't they pretty? Okay, let's get these set up so you can see them. So allow came out and assurance. So I think I want to start by reading about the Chariot in reverse. And I'm getting the sense that, let's actually do that from a different guidebook I have called the Everyday Tarot Deck guidebook, because it reads reversal. So this Muse Tarot, I don't believe, has a reversal message in it. And I am getting the sense, if you've tuned into my readings before, you know that I read reversals intuitively. So I don't always read them, but I feel like it's important in this one. So I'm going to actually read the upright and the reverse so you can feel the difference of this. So it says the upright, if you were to have gotten the Chariot upright, it says you are the driving force fueled by determination and willpower. You stop at nothing on your path to success. You overcome obstacles and find your cohesion between opposing forces. And find cohesion between opposing forces. Now reversed, it says connect with your inner strength and willpower to move forward. Your motivation comes from within, not from an external source. Well, what did this awakening card say? It was like intrinsic expansion, right? Something like that. I'm pretty sure those were the words. Intrinsic expansion. So how wild is that it says your motivation comes from within, not an external source. You cannot control everything. Sometimes it is best to loosen your grip. Now, that seems to speak directly to this allow and assurance, doesn't it? So there's definitely a message here. I don't think it's saying don't move forward. I don't think it's saying don't put things into action. I think this is speaking more to the energy that could help you break through to a new level of spiritual growth. And what does a new level of spiritual growth mean? I think a new level of spiritual growth always opens up more inner peace. There's more like integrity that can happen between your values and beliefs and how you're living your life, right? And so there's definitely this call here to not try to control it. And let me just sit with this. It's even a little different. So I think it's not even, it's almost like not try to control it in terms of not trying to be so good spiritually. But then I also think it's like in other areas of your life, if you can loosen up the grip a little bit and allow the universe, allow Mother God, whatever word you give to that which is, and that which is bigger than all of us, to show you how it works, to show you how she works a little more. Because I think what's happening here is that there might be some like control trying to be had, and it might even be unconscious. You know, in other readings, I think this Chariot card, when it's upright, can be very beautiful. Like there's a lot of strength and stuff. But in terms of the message here, what I'm seeing and feeling from this card in this particular reading is like a rigidness, right? And like a trying too hard. And I think it's not only maybe trying too hard in maybe your spiritual practices, but just in life in general, that maybe you don't have to try as hard as you think you do. That maybe the things that you say you want from trying that hard won't actually fill the hole that you think they will. And with a little more like exhale and willingness and allowing, you might be shown what would actually fill the hole that you're trying to fill by maybe trying to drive yourself forward too quickly, or trying to be so good. You know that essence. And oh my God, I can like definitely resonate with this reading, because that's essentially what I was always trying to do in the past, and still have the tendency to do, you know, if I'm not aware. And that is really just trying to be good and trying to have everything right and controlling and manipulating things. And that was like kind of the only way I knew how to be safe. Now, I definitely think I'm getting the sense that that is something you've been working on, and you're not like completely unconscious to that. But I also think there's always room for us to have a willingness to release that tendency a little bit. And for some reason, what's really sticking out to me now is that, so in this card, you'll see there's like horses. That's what she's like leading, so to speak. And do you see how those horses are all colored by the same colors as these tree cards? So there's this assurance and allowing. And I feel like the message that Spirit wants to give is like, I have your back. I have your back. That's what I'm getting with this assurance card. So there's almost like this baby step by baby step trust fall that the universe would like you to practice. So just like little mini trust falls, right? And so how would you practice that? Like, I think that it can start with things like willingness statements. Those have had huge impacts on my life. So I'm willing to change. That comes from Louise Hay. I'm willing to do this differently. I'm willing to see this differently. That comes from A Course in Miracles. So this idea that maybe the way you think everything has to go down, or the way that you believe you have to be like so good, or something along those lines, like what if some of those are misperceptions? And what if you are willing to allow allow those misperceptions to be corrected? And from that, I think what can open up is this beautiful expression and practice and building of inner strength, and the amazing like feeling, or not just feeling. Well, okay, I guess what I'm trying to say is there's capacity in these two cards, in the Strength card and the Queen of Emotions, which is the Queen of Cups. There's capacity there. And I think that is what you, like almost like the reward that you will be gifted as you're more and more willing to put these sort of things in practice. So essentially, instead of like forcing your will, getting a bit more curious about what might be the will of nature, what might be the will of Mother God in a situation. And from that, then there is this building of capacity to be essentially this queen of your flow. Because Queen of Cups does definitely represent emotion. So there's a maturity in how you're being with your emotions. But cups also represent flow, how we flow with life, how we because like life is flow, right? So our relationship with that flow is up to us, right? And there's an infinite number of ways we can be in relationship with how we flow with life. Or maybe I should just say how we're in relationship with life. And then from that, there's this abundant flowing flow, or there's like there's stagnancy, or there's blocks, or there's rigidity, or there's chaos, right? And so there's something here about like there's a calm that I'm getting because of the capacity you've built to be with yourself. There's like a reckoning, right? But then also to be with life, because I think there is inner strength and inner peace that happens when we realize that we're not fully in charge, right? When we can more and more understand, certainly we have choice, but there is also bigger picture things going on, right? I think the more we mature in our spiritual growth, the more we understand the nuance of that, right? And that's something that I am certainly working on every day, understanding that there are times when surrender is really healthy, and then there are times when it's really toxic. And there are times when assertion is really healthy, and there are times when it's really toxic. And it's important for us to, I think, be aware of that and to understand the nuance of that, and to more and more awaken to the fact that those are our two options: surrender to hearing, to listening to Mother God, right? And then also asserting our desires and preferences, asserting with our actions and our more masculine energy, right? And those things, again, although those are our options, they can be done in toxic ways and healthy ways. And so really paying attention as we go, moment in, moment out, building our consciousness of when we are maybe asserting when we're actually being asked to surrender, or when we are surrendering when we're actually being asked to assert. So I definitely think the Chariot card isn't like, don't be assertive, don't own your authority. I think it's just about maybe the nuance of that now. Because when we're doing either of those things, surrendering or asserting, when it's the toxic sense, then what's happening is we are, essentially there's a manipulation there happening, right? Whether it's conscious or not. And so I think the awakening that you're being called to is just like a higher level understanding, or maybe better put, just like a more nuanced understanding of your choice in the matter, your choice in the matter of life. And realizing that both the practice of surrendering and asserting are important, but also realizing they can both be healthy or toxic. And now starting to really pay attention to when and how you're using those like currencies of choice, and starting to identify like, ooh, I think in that situation, maybe that was toxic. Ooh, I think in that situation, that was healthy. And from there, I feel like you're gaining, like I said, this capacity and almost like this richness to you, that then you are like able to take moving forward into any situation. But I really do think it starts with this like allowance and assurance. So maybe it starts with a little surrender, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I think it might start with a little surrender, because that's what I'm definitely getting with the center of this reading, with the assurance, the Chariot in reverse, and allowing. Like maybe you're being asked to surrender a little more, but then I don't think it ends with surrender. Then I think it's about this growing in this richness of understanding of what it means to be a human being with free will, and also have a relationship with life and spirit, and understanding we don't, that broader wisdom that comes from connecting to life, spirit, Mother God, again, whatever name you want to give it, that there's surrendering that needs to happen in order for there to be health and joy and inner peace in our life, and that it is this dance that's happening. And so I'm just like loving this, loving the colors and the imagery, loving where you're at. Because clearly you're a very driven person who's also done a lot of work, inner work up until this point, spiritual practices up until this point. And so I think you're being invited to just like higher level understandings. And what am I trying to say? Not only higher level understandings, but like you're wanting to be acknowledged for all the work you've done up until this point. And I think you're wanting to be acknowledged for your drive for life. And you're also now wanting to be given guidance about how to use that drive even more tactfully than you have been in the past. Again, there's like this call to nuance, this call to richness that I'm really, really loving from this. And that does take awakening, and that does take reckoning, doesn't it? This idea that as we become more, as we grow, just as humans in life, but then also as spiritual beings, like we're able to, it's almost as if we like develop a palate more for life. You know what I mean? Like if you've never eaten a food before, typically, or you haven't had complexity of flavor before, oftentimes there's not a palate developed in terms of your taste, right? And the more you eat different flavors, the more you eat a particular thing, like for example, wine, right? When I first tried wine, when I was, in my 20s, like, I just wanted white wine that was super sweet. But the more you drink it, the more you can understand the beauty of the complexity, and you can taste that complexity, and you have preferences in it, and so on and so forth. And I'm getting that sense here. But in terms of just your relationship with life and your relationship, even like with willpower, it seems like where your choice is in life, you're becoming more nuanced for that, and you're like developing, or you're either in the midst of it, or you're being invited to do what I'm speaking out, which is developing this palette a little more, so that you can awaken to the complexities of all this, because it is more nuanced and complex than just, either assert or surrender. At least in my experience, there is this complexity to it where kind of moment in and moment out, we have to be aware of how we are dancing with life, and be willing to self-reflect and notice when sometimes we're, be strong enough to notice when we're doing it in a healthy way, and also be strong enough to notice when we're doing it in an unhealthy way. And from that, you just build your capacity and your strength.